Okay, Selena,
great.
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome everyone to this Milk and Honey Whiskey Distillery session organized by Cornerstone Winery. Milk and Honey is the first Middle East Israeli and kosher whiskey from Israel. It is also the winner of the International Spirits Challenge 2021 and the Frankfurt International Trophy 2020 for gold. I'm sure there's more coming up, right? I'd like to welcome Mr. Oded Weiss, International Representative of M&H Distillery, to this session. We are looking forward to learning more about M&H whiskey. Thank you, Cornerstone, for facilitating this. SPC members, remember you can join the quiz after the event to win a full 700 ml bottle of your choice from either Classic or the Elements range. So everyone, without wasting much more time.
Sorry, I just joined. I heard your last part. Hi.
Hi, okay, just in time.
No, sorry, I couldn't sign in. Bad link, and I had to go and dig up the new link. No trouble.
Okay.
Yep.
No, it's my advice was to stay on till after the event, and so they can win a bottle, a full 700 ml bottle.
Well, I got 4 bottles already, so you know.
One more won't harm you.
No, Patrick is disqualifying himself. Thank you, Patrick.
No. 4 here in front of me.
All right, that's good.
Yep.
So we will
thanks.
share the quiz link right after the event. So listen carefully to what Oded has to say about the Milk and Honey Distillery as well as the whiskies that they have to offer, so that you will be able to get 100 marks for your quiz. Okay, great.
My first question is really, how do you get the name? Why do you choose the name Milk and Honey?
Right, should I answer now?
Yeah. Please.
Okay. So actually, Milk and Honey in the Bible, Israel, the land of Israel, is named the land of milk and honey as a way to attract the people of Israel to the land, saying that it is bountiful. It is full of milk and honey and the 7 species, which are kinds of fruit and grain. So it is still to this day a way to describe Israel as a place that is bountiful and has something good for all of us.
You see, I already learned something new.
Okay, so it's
Great.
so
I didn't know that, Sorry to say,
Sure.
Whiz.
No, yeah, you're not alone. A lot of people outside of Israel are not certainly aware of that specific phrase. So yeah, in Israel it's a very common thing. We also have a song like Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash. It's a whole thing. Outside of Israel, we really get this question a lot. So yeah, thank you for asking that.
No
it's
problem.
important.
Okay,
Happy to learn
Oded, you
something
can share.
new.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Right, you're never interrupting, and I'll do my best to answer as many questions as possible during the time that we have. Let me just get, can you give me 30 seconds to connect my laptop to the outlet so it wouldn't run out of battery? So just 1 sec.
Okay, welcome everyone, since we are having 1 second. Patrick, Selena, Judy, Melinda Tan also joined us with her friend.
Melinda. Hi,
Yeah,
Melinda.
Melinda.
Where are you?
Then Aziz.
Hi, behind the screen.
Wait, let me see. Melinda.
And Junie.
Hello, everyone. Yeah.
And Lin Fen is here with us too.
Where? Lin Fen? Hello? Where's Lin Fen? Hey, hi.
Hello.
You got whiskey or not?
Of course.
Come on, you told me I would have sent you 1 bottle.
What? Sorry?
You told me you are coming, I would have sent you 1 bottle.
Yeah. Now then you say. Okay.
I got 4 bottles here. I can spare you 1, man.
Okay. Next time.
In case you're
Thank you,
wondering, I'm actually opening up all the bottles so that I can pour quickly.
Patrick, we're waiting for you. We're all anxious to have the sip.
Yeah.
So he can start.
We'll get Ricky really, really soon. It's all my first slides. But first, let me welcome you to Tel Aviv. I am in the distillery right now. I demonstrated to Chant and Selena earlier how nice and sunny it is here in the end of November right now in Tel Aviv. It's about 26 degrees Celsius, and this is what we call the Israeli winter. So we are M&H. Our story, well, it's written here in long, but I'd like to keep it short. So the guy you see on your bottom right is Dr. James Swan, that you might know from other distilleries like Kavalan and Amrut and Kilchoman. So in 2012, a group of founders, Israeli founders, that actually came from the high-tech industry. They did not have any prior experience in the whiskey or beverage or even the pub industry. They teamed up with Dr. James Swan, who is world famous for his projects in hot climate countries and starting new distilleries. They teamed up to create the very first Israeli whiskey distillery. Now, notice that I'm talking about 2012. That's not that long ago. We're not even a 10-year-old distillery, but we're the first in Israel to make proper whiskey. Now, the reason it took that long is that Israel has a very weird drinking culture. We like to think as ourselves as big drinkers because we are a party nation, especially in Tel Aviv. I don't know if any of you have been to Tel Aviv yet, but if you're into partying, that is one of the best places to be on planet Earth. But over the years of our existence, we did not drink a lot. Our drinking per capita is not that wide, and whiskey has been excluded from a lot of people's menus for a very long time because a lot of people, well, I just said it's 26 degrees in winter, and a lot of people think, wow, that's way too hot of a weather to be drinking whiskey. So we entered the market in a point in which we didn't only have to create a whiskey brand from the bottom up. We had to develop a local whiskey drinking culture and whiskey culture in general, not just drinking, in order to have a strong basis to do that. So it was a dream that we started with. It was a very far-fetched dream, as some people said, and a lot of people around us told us that it was impossible. People in Israel don't drink whiskey. They don't know about whiskey. We don't have the local professionals to do it. It's impossible. But if you have met Israelis before, and if you haven't, then you've met your first one, let me tell you, there is nothing more motivating for an Israeli person than the words, "This is impossible." If you tell us something is impossible, we will try, go ahead and do it anyway. I mean, we started a country in 1948. People told us that it was impossible. It's a very big mess, I will admit, but it's a beautiful mess. And that's just because people told us how impossible that was. So with country as well as whiskey, we always try to defy the impossible. So just a few more words about the people who founded us. Gal Kalkstein is our founder and CEO. The person who took over from Dr. James Swan in 2014 is our master distiller to this day, Tomer Goren, which is the first Israeli master distiller. He was trained in Europe and then went to apprenticeships in several distilleries in Scotland.
Sorry, you were going a bit too fast. Can you give us the name again?
Tomer Goren, that is the guy. You might look him up on Google and you'll find a redhead guy with a very big beard. That is Tomer. And Tomer brought his expertise to Israel, and we were the first to fetch him, and we're glad to have him around. And we went a very long course, and in the end of that course, just very recently, Whiskey Magazine that holds the icons of whiskey competition every year named M&H the craft producer of the year in the world in 2021, which is we didn't even know we were nominated. We found out by complete accident, and we were really glad to find out that there is recognition for what we do here in Israel, and that's something major for us, and we cherish that, and it only motivates us to work harder.
And how long have you been in business? How long? Since 2012?
So 2012, we started, we opened the business. The distillery itself was erected around 2014, and we've been active since. So here you can actually see in the timeline that we've been founded in 2012. We began building the distillery I'm sitting in now in 2014. That's also when we started our experimental distillations. In 2015, the first distillation took place here in Tel Aviv. The first Israeli single malt whiskey was released in May 2017, and it was the result of experience we did beforehand. Just a year later, in 2018, we became an international brand. Up until that point, we only sold in Israel. Our first markets outside of Israel were Benelux, were Belgium, Holland, and Luxembourg. We've grown since to over 30 markets worldwide, all the way from the US, Argentina, through Europe and South Africa and Russia and Singapore. And soon we hope to extend it to many other countries and many more destinations, because for us, any market is a new adventure. We have launched our very first commercial whiskey, the classic that you're going to taste today, in December of 2019, and the elements that you're also going to taste two of just that consequent year. We are planning a big launching for all of them in 2020. We had events lined up. We were going to go all around the world and present it physically. And then 2020 happened. And we saw all the different events that we had planned, all the festivals being crossed off our list when COVID hit the world and Israel as well, clearly, but we did not want to give up because it's not our way. So we switched everything to Zoom. Zooms just as the ones we're doing now. In 2020, we've sold out our entire inventory, and the classic that we're going to taste in a bit was named one of the top 20 whiskeys in the world in 2020 by Whiskey Advocate. So the core values that you see in the bottom that lead us are innovation, in the sense that we're looking to add something new into the whiskey world. We don't want to be just another distillery making whiskey. We want to add something new, bring our own thing into it. Next to it, we want to fulfill an Israeli dream. It was dreamed by local people in a very underdeveloped drinking culture that loved whiskey and were passionate about it and were willing to take that leap of faith of starting the very first Israeli distillery. And we are living and fulfilling that dream every day. The next two is without compromise and international. We're not compromising on the ingredients, on the instruments we work with, on the manpower, and on the final whiskey that we make. We want to make everything top notch, and we want to have the highest quality in every step of the process. And we are an international brand. From the beginning, we did not aim to be this, small boutique company that only sells in Israel for a very bloated price. We wanted to be an international brand that brings the word of Israeli whiskey to all corners of the globe. And I'm happy to say that from where we're standing now, we are on the right course to do that.
Sorry, Oded, one question. How many whiskey makers are there in Israel?
Right. So once we have started shop, very soon other distilleries join. So right now, if I'm counting active distilleries that are right now making whiskey, we have 4. We have 2 that are being established right now. And I expect that by 2025, we might actually have 8 different distilleries. So just imagine that within less than a decade, Israel has jumped from 0 distilleries to 4, soon to be 6 distilleries, which is quite massive considering that we are a 9 million population, out of which about 20% don't drink alcohol. So that's quite a big jump. Among these distilleries, we're the only proper international distillery that sells to markets outside of Israel on a regular basis.
Okay.
So I'd like to start with our first drink of the day. So if you have your taste of classic, I will pour myself one myself and tell you about it as we try it.
Are we allowed to drink as well? Yeah.
Yeah, you're obligated to. I'm kidding. I'd be really happy to share this drink with you. So,
Oded, before you go on, could you explain to us the idea of kosher whiskey?
yeah, sure. I was
Why is it
actually going to
kosher?
get that later, but I actually have some music coming from one of the windows, and it's a bit of. Okay, thank you. So I will get to that in more detail later, but in general, there is what we call a kosher certification in the Jewish religion. You have halal in Islam as well, but kosherness defines what a religious Jewish person is allowed to eat or not allowed to eat according to the religion. And kosher is the way to certify that something is fit for a religious Jew to consume. For me personally, not all Jews keep kosher. I'm Jewish myself. I don't keep kosher. It's not a major thing for me, but for a lot of other people, it is. So there are some rabbis who are licensed to give off kosher certifications. They actually come to the distillery, they check all the different processes, all the ingredients, they make sure everything is in order and in line with the kosher rules, and then they certify you. With whiskey, it is not a very big deal because, as mundane as it might sound, whiskey did not appear in word in the Bible. So as long as something didn't appear specifically in the Bible, the kosherness for it is much more lax. But when it comes to wine, which we're going to get to in a few minutes, wine is a much bigger issue because it's sacrament, it's sacred in the Jewish religion, and much more kosher rules apply to it. But with the classic, it's not much of an issue. So with the classic, we're talking about our entry-level whiskey. This is a whiskey that is designated to be a table whiskey. By table whiskey, I mean that you take the classic, you take the bottle, you put it on the table, like that. And let's say that on one side of the table, that there is a very experienced whiskey drinker. And on the other end, someone who never tried whiskey before. This is a whiskey that can appeal to both sides of the table. It's 46% ABV, it's non-chill filtered, and it's all natural color made from grain to bottle here in the distillery in Tel Aviv. It is 80% ex-bourbon, which is the most common cask in the whiskey world. Very nice, very sweet. There is about 18% of ex-red wine STR casks that used to have Cabernet Sauvignon and then were shaved, toasted, and recharged. That is the STR. It is a method in order to adjust these casks to a hot climate like the one we have in Tel Aviv. And the final few percents are just a few drops of virgin oak casks that have never been used before, in order to give the wooden background. So I think what you would observe here, it's a very balanced whiskey, very easy drinking, mostly sweet with notes of milk chocolate and vanilla, then a little bit of spice in the palate, and a nice warm oak sensation that carries you throughout. So as we say here in Israel, L'chaim.
Hi.
I think this one, I mean, I sort of quite liked it because it's quite spicier. You think about it, Patrick? Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say it's very drinkable.
Thank you.
It is quite spicy.
Yeah.
That's due to the red wine casks. Now they're not in a very big proportion, as you've heard. It's only 18%, but their effect is quite massive. You have to understand that STR casks have been developed specifically for hot climate distilleries by Dr. Jim Swan that I mentioned earlier. Red wine casks are not very frequently used in the whiskey industry, and that is something really special that you can find in several distilleries that work with Dr. Jim Swan, some of which I've mentioned before, like Kabbalan, Amrut, Kilchoman, Cotswolds, Penderyn, and so on. M&H is no different to that.
Sorry.
So we have, yeah.
Can I just say,
Sure.
LF, is that Leslie? Leslie, are you joining us? There's a LF who's tuned out, but anyway, yeah.
Hi, Pat, that's
Lin-
me.
Lin Feng,
That's
Lin
me.
Feng.
Hi,
Louis.
Pat.
Okay.
It's me. Sorry, it's me.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I got a question. Also.
No,
You
yeah,
know,
go ahead.
I noticed something that you've used the bull
Correct.
as a
Correct.
yeah.
It's a
We
B.
are using
So
the bull,
why
as you
the
see-
bull?
So as you notice, the bull has yellow and black stripes.
Yeah, okay.
So
And with the
it's a
horns.
combination. It's milk and honey, so it's a combination between, it's supposed to be a combination between a cow and a bee. So milk and honey. But we put on. It used to be a cow. It didn't look very good as a logo, so we switched it to a bull, thinking that nobody would notice. Of course, everybody noticed, but it looks pretty good, so we just kept it this way.
Yeah. Wonderful. So this is your entry level whiskey.
That is our entry-level whiskey. That's how I would introduce people to M&H, because also something that's worth keeping in mind. I will talk about our maturation process in a moment. But what you will find with a lot of hot climate distilleries that come from places like Australia, Taiwan, India, and so on, you would find that in their entry-level whiskeys, they tend to have very strong, very I wouldn't say aggressive, but very expressive whiskeys. And if we wanted to do that, that would be the easiest choice to make. The whiskey in our casks turns very intense, very deep, very complex, very easily after quite a short time. But with the classic, we actually wanted to find the balance within the intensity. We wanted to bring something different. We want to bring a point in which people can actually see that we don't only make good whiskey, we also know how to blend it right and bring something forward that appeals to a wider range of drinkers. So,
sorry. Carry on, Patrick.
No, I have to say, for an entry level, it's not at all rough. Most entry level is a bit rough, on the throat.
Thank you.
So this is actually quite smooth. And
thanks.
what do you retail your classic at, if I may ask?
Oh, that's a question best addressed to Lewis and the friends in Cornerstone. Right. Yeah. These are questions that are for our distributor, the Singapore partners at Cornerstone.
So, Lewis, what's your retail price for the entry level?
Yeah, guys, the normal retail price is just slightly above $100 at the retail shops.
For the classic.
For the classic, yes. But more often than not, you can find it. If you call us directly, we'll work something out for you. So not a problem.
About 100. Okay.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Thanks.
For us. So you only make single malts?
We only make single malts. We have experimented with other types of grain, but just for the sake of the experiment, from the beginning, we were aiming to be a single malt distillery. And that's something that goes for both our whiskey and the rest of our products like the gin. We were focused around making single malt whiskeys because first, this is what Tomel, our master distiller, specializes in. And it is a certain profile that we wanted to create for the first Israeli whiskey.
Okay, first one, pass.
Sorry, come again?
Pass. Tick.
Yeah. No,
right.
I've got this comment, nothing to do with the taste. I'm going back to this thing. It's just quite smart, because you say honey, because bees, honey, of course, we all know where it comes from, right? So honey comes from bees. But you know why? Because having heard what you said, it's same thing in our holy book too, right? See, honey is such a wonderful thing. When you're sick, you take honey. If you got the wound, you can put honey on your wound. It heals. And milk is supposed to cool down the system, like for what we all know. So
hello.
I think, no, but it's good.
You don't need milk and honey to drink. Anything you will drink, But
but do you know the milk and honey actually is a wonderful drink, and that makes you, in fact, if you have a problem sleeping, warm milk with honey, you can go to bed faster.
Yeah,
Oded will confirm that.
Yeah. Anyway, you want to sleep, just have a peg of whiskey, my friend.
It's also true. Yeah. To go to sleep, I usually drink whiskey. But I will say that the words milk and honey, I still use it because I'm very used. But as you'll see, our logo states M&H. We switched to M&H as our going name. We are now called the M&H Distillery more frequently because we had this instance in which a lot of people expected us to have like sweet liqueurs and maybe have like something sweet because we have milk and honey in our name. So just to cut these mistakes a bit shorter, we switched to M&H. But yeah, I would definitely recommend milk or honey. Yeah, we're focused on whiskey. That's our forte.
So you won gold medals for this whiskey, the classic.
Oh yeah, several. That's just a few of the medals that it won. I will say that when it comes to whiskey competitions, we tend to say that there are more whiskey competitions than whiskey brands in the world. So yeah, the classic managed to score some major awards regardless. So the IC and the Frankfurt and the top 50 whiskeys are just three of, I would say by now, around 10 different gold and double gold medals that it has won since 2019 when it was launched. So yeah, it garnered several major accolades in the industry.
Okay, excellent.
Perfect. So moving on to tell you more about Tel Aviv. So Tel Aviv is located, well, you can see on the map on top, it's located right in the center of Israel to the coast of the Mediterranean. And while, as you might know, Jerusalem is the political and diplomatical capital of Israel, or some would call the actual capital, Tel Aviv is the cultural, technological, and culinary capital of Israel. Jerusalem might be the capital, but Tel Aviv is where everything actually happens. It's a huge tourist destination. It's a 24/7 city. It's vibrant. It's cool. It's young. It's where we have everything going on. And apart from that, we also have 300 days of sun. I believe it's more than that. Temperatures are ranging between, that's actually even more extreme than what's in the presentation. It can get between 5 degrees in winter to 45, 47 degrees Celsius in the summer. And sometimes in winter, we can have 5 degrees at night and then 30 degrees the afternoon just the next day. So it's a very dynamic climate with also 50 to 90% of humidity. So what I want you to imagine is that our casks are maturing just 7 minutes away from the Mediterranean coast without any type of climate control. And whenever there is this fluctuation between cold and hot, humid and dry, the casks, because they're made of wood, keep expanding and shrinking, expanding and shrinking. And that happens constantly. It would happen anywhere. But if in Scotland, they say that they fill up a cask and it goes to sleep, in Tel Aviv, it runs a marathon because it keeps doing that. And that leads to 3 major effects. One of them is the spirit getting further into the deeper layers of the wood, managing to get much more flavor in a much shorter time. The expanding and shrinking also causes the casks to breathe much faster, and it causes oxidation. Now, while we might know oxidation as a bad thing with most types of food or drink, oxidation for whiskey is actually a very positive process. It breaks down some of the compounds in the whiskey and makes for a much more flavorful, smoother drinking experience. Now, if in Scotland, oxidation takes about 8 years to take effect, in Israel, in Tel Aviv, 1 year passes before we start seeing the effects of the oxidation. Apart from that, we have the third effect, which is the angel's share. Now, if you don't know angel's share is the nickname given to the evaporation of either alcohol or water from a cask during the time it is matured, because both water and alcohol can evaporate, counting on the climate outside. In Scotland, the angel's share every year is 2 to 3%. In Tel Aviv, it's 10 to 12%. So 4 to 6 times the amount of evaporation in Scotland. So just imagine that after 3 years, we're already losing a full 25% of the cask. And that's without me drinking any of it. I mean, if I had any of it, it would be 50%, tops. But 25% is already lost to the angels, or because Tel Aviv is a party city, to the devils, because all the angels are in Jerusalem, that, as we like to say, is 40 minutes and 3,000 years away from Tel Aviv. And that all leads to the point in which, after 3 years, we managed to extract the amount of flavor from the cask that is equivalent to 12 to 15 years in Scotland. That doesn't mean we make something that is just like a 12 to 15-year-old Scotch whiskey, but the complexity and the depth of the whiskey after 3 to 4 years is very much equivalent in terms of aroma and taste.
Sorry, so the classic, how long is it? How old is it?
Right, so the classic that you've tasted, all the casks inside are between 3 to 4 years. And it's important to say, after 4.5, 5 years in Tel Aviv, a cask might very well be already over matured, too woody. We've experimented with maturing casks for 5 years, and almost all of them turned out to be undrinkable because there was so much of the wooden flavor inside. So we are actually working on a very short time frame, between 3 years, which is the minimum, to 4 years before it starts becoming too mature. So we're working on a very short time frame. So it's a stressful job sometimes, but it's a big part of being a distillery in Israel.
But it's a good thing, because you can manufacture more whiskey. You know, after 4 years, you can, yeah.
So remember that we do lose a lot more of the cask. Just imagine that in order to lose that much volume, a Scottish distillery needs to age their whiskey for about 15 years. For us, 3 years, we lose the same amount as 15 years in Scotland. So I think that there is like this equivalence that I can say that we don't necessarily produce more than a Scottish distillery. We have conditions that create a very special whiskey to work with. Now, just to give you a nice look on Tel Aviv, these are actually two parts of Tel Aviv. On the maps, you might see Tel Aviv as Tel Aviv Jaffa. And these are two separate urban entities, actually. So Tel Aviv is the one on top. That's the Tel Aviv skyline. As you see, it's very modern with all the skyscrapers and lights and the highways. It's a city that never sleeps, but 30 minutes of walk south from the point we're looking at on the picture above, you see the picture on the bottom. That is Old Jaffa. Jaffa is a 3,000-old port city that is just attached to Tel Aviv. It's been there for a very long time. And M&H, the distillery, is just on the border between Tel Aviv and Jaffa. Now, there is something quite poetic here, because Tel Aviv, the name, is divided into two, Tel and Aviv. Tel means old city ruins, like a mound, and Aviv means spring. Tel Aviv is just over 100 years old. It was established in the 20th century, while Jaffa is 3,000 years old. And Tel Aviv, the mound and the spring, is a game of old and new. And Tel Aviv also, because it has Jaffa inside it, is also a combination of old and new. But it doesn't stop there. We are a whiskey distillery in Israel, and we are definitely doing something new. But we pay a lot of respect to the centuries-old tradition of whiskey that comes from Scotland and from Ireland and from other countries that have been doing it for a very long time. So we are doing something that is old. It's an old trade, but we're putting something new into it. So Tel Aviv is in a lot of ways the perfect place to combine the tradition and the innovation, the old and the new.
Okay.
So, yeah, just beyond Tel Aviv, just so you understand, Israel from top to bottom is a very small country. I grew up in the most south part of Israel. It's a desert. So on winter, I could make the decision between getting on a car, driving for 20 minutes south and go scuba diving in the Red Sea, or driving the other way for 4.5 hours, and I'm already at the northern border of Israel skiing in the Upper Galilee that you see on the top left. Israel, within this very small space, has 5 very distinct climate zones, from the Upper Galilee that has snowy mountains in the winter to the Jerusalem mountains that are just 40 minutes away from Tel Aviv, but are elevated quite a bit from the coast. So there is a lot of wind coming in from the sea. We have the desert on the top right, which is 2/3 of Israel. 2/3 of Israel is a desert, a very arid, very hot, very dry desert. That's where I grew up. There is the coastal plain on the bottom right, which is where we are located in Tel Aviv, very humid, very hot, very Mediterranean. And the one in the big picture, the bottom left, is the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is the lowest place on Earth. It has its own distinct climate with barely any rainfall, up to 55 degrees Celsius in the summer and below 0 in winter. The Dead Sea might be a sea, but it doesn't have any waves. And if you ever come to Israel, it's a must. You have to visit the Dead Sea because it also has a natural buoyancy. You can actually float when you lie down in the Dead Sea, which is very cool. But I'm not just telling you about these different zones for nothing. In each of these different zones, we have M&H maturation project. We take several casks from our warehouses and we mature them in these zones to see what kind of effect we're going to have. So right now, in these 5 climate zones, we have casks maturing. And the most famous project that we're doing right now is the Dead Sea project. We actually launched one edition of the Dead Sea. In the Dead Sea, I just told you about the climate. And if you remember me telling you about a 12% angels share every year in Tel Aviv, in the Dead Sea, it's 25% angels share a year. We put our casks on the rooftop of a hotel in a metal cage in the Dead Sea to see what kind of effect, the lowest place on Earth, minus 430 meters below sea level. We wanted to see what is going to happen, and the effects were incredible, just outworldly. It's a whole different whiskey, and we can't wait for the whiskeys from the Upper Galilee, Jerusalem mountains, and the desert to also be mature and get to 3 years so we can see what kind of crazy things happen to whiskey across Israel. And it's been a beautiful ride up until now, and we're sure that it will continue to be beautiful. So we're moving on to the Elements series, which is our second tier. It's just above the classic. And with the Elements series, we're still looking to maintain the idea of balance. With the Element series, in each edition, we have a different cask type that usually has a very strong, very distinct character. And we take that character and we try to bring a balanced expression of that. So the first one I want you to taste is the Elements Sherry. So if you have the Almond Sherry, let's open it now, have a drink. So the composition of Almond Sherry is 50% full maturation ex-sherry casks, and then the other 50% is a combination of ex-bourbon and red wine. The reason we did this combination in-house is actually to open up the sherry flavors, because most frequently sherry whiskeys have a very strong flavor of the sherry that might very well block other flavors and aromas from appearing. And here, opening the sherry flavors up with ex-bourbon and red wine actually contribute to make a very complex addition that still manages to maintain very nice, deep, rich texture and experience for the drinker. Now, as you're experimenting and trying the Almond Sherry, I will tell you that if you asked about kosherness earlier, that was a very big issue. Because, as I said, wine is a very big thing for kosher keeping personnel. Wine appeared in the Bible, and it's a very major part of the Jewish religion. And the kosher supervision is much more strict when it comes to wine. And sherry is a type of wine. And we wanted to do whiskey in ex-sherry casks. We knew that from the beginning. It's a very common thing to want in the whiskey industry, but we ran into an issue when we discovered that never in history was there ever a kosher sherry bodega, never a kosher sherry winery, nothing like that. So we could have given up, but as I told you before, when you tell an Israeli something is important anyway, so we contacted a winery in Jerez, in Spain, that makes sherry, and we asked them whether they would be willing to go kosher just to make casks for M&H. And happily for us, they said yes. And we brought in the chief rabbi of Barcelona, all the way down to the other side of the Iberian Peninsula. We kosher certified a whole sherry winery that right now makes custom-made sherry. So we can have the casks. It's something very uncommon. You have to understand that right now, in the whiskey industry, the global whiskey industry, there are very few distilleries that have their own cask seasoning project in Spain. We have Macallan that have that, Glenlivet have that, and now M&H from Israel has that. But it was a path we were willing to take in order to create this. And personally, I am very happy that we've made this one. And
Oded, tell me something. Both your whiskeys so far are sweeter than most other whiskeys. Do you add sugar to it? Do you put honey in it? Do you? Anything?
Of course, none of that. None of that. Of course not.
Naturally sweet.
Naturally sweet, and I'll tell you something beyond that. We wouldn't be able to call it whiskey if we added anything beyond what is traditionally called whiskey, which is a grain spirit, in our instance, 100% barley in order to make it single malt. So 100% barley, double distilled in pot stills and matured for at least 3 years in oak casks. Nothing else is added. The whiskey is not manipulated in any way.
Where is your barley from? Do you grow it in Israel?
Right, very good question. So our barley actually comes from England. As I mentioned, 2/3 of Israel is a desert, and we don't have a lot of water in Israel. We filter, we distill a lot of water. We're a big, we have a huge water distillation industry, but we don't have a lot of water and not a lot of growing space. And while there is a very small bit of barley growing in Israel, it is very nutritional, but very low on sugar. It's not a barley that you can consistently make whiskey out of. So we import our barley from England.
And your water is distilled water?
Our water is actually water that goes through reverse osmosis. The water in Israel is very heavy because most frequently we use underground aquifers, underground water. So it's quite heavy. So we have to soften it in a water laboratory. So it goes through a reverse osmosis process in order to adjust it for the whiskey making process. Right.
This is a very good whiskey.
Thank you so much. I think that I would say that in a lot of senses, this is what we call,
Let me ask the others. Aziz, what do you think, Aziz?
Yeah, but you know something?
Yeah.
The bottle that I got, I think they gave me a wrong labeling. The reddish one, the one it says sherry here is not the one which is reddish. I don't know, because you know this has all been packed and given to us. I took the small bottles, right?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I saw the word sherry because it's very small print, but it's different color. But I don't know. But the taste was like that, you see. So and then there's another one that's a very reddish color, which I just poured myself, and I'm going to try that. But I don't know whether there was a mistake by Cornerstone or whatever, but it has become lighter when it's poured in a small bottle. I don't know. But it tasted good. The one I'm drinking, the word sherry appears, but it's not reddish color.
What, the whiskey or the bottle, the label?
No, the labeling. So that's why I don't understand, because I'm looking at the label, right? Then only I open up the bottle. So it says sherry here.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, correct. But the point is, what I'm saying is that it wasn't reddish in color. So it's,
maybe
Yeah.
The small bottle is different color.
Yeah,
from
different,
the
but
big
the
bottle.
taste is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Taste
just
is
had it.
good.
I just had it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh yeah, rest assured that in all the expressions
Hi.
that we're tasting today, this is the only sherry expression that we'll have today. So if it says sherry, then I'm sure that it's the right
Okay.
one.
I'm sure.
The differentiation in color is quite peculiar, I will admit. So we can look into that later. But as long as you're having the sherry expression, that we're all good.
Yeah.
So it usually comes in red. This is the color of the label, and I think that
And where does your sherry cask come from? Where do you
our sherry casks, as I mentioned, come from Jerez in Spain.
in Spain, Jerez? Okay.
Yeah. In Jerez, it's otherwise you wouldn't be able to call it sherry. So yeah, Jerez in Spain, all the way. It's proper sherry, PX and Oloroso specifically. And I think that it's fair to call this one our crowd pleaser. It's not because it is made specifically to be pleasing. It's because I think most people like sherry casks. I very rarely do I meet people who say they don't like whiskey in sherry casks, and I think that this is a great showcase of what you can do when you balance out sherry casks, open them up, make it very drinkable, very interesting. It's a more sophisticated take on sherry casks from our perspective. And if you have any more comments and questions, I'd love to answer any of them.
One more question. Which Scottish whiskey is your sherry cask closest to?
To none. It doesn't. I wouldn't. Look, it's beyond the marketing point of view. Our whiskey does not taste like Scottish whiskey. It's not a profile that we're looking for. It's also a profile that even if we did, we wouldn't be able to recreate. But once again, that is not our intention. We're always looking to create our own whiskey. I'll tell you something beyond that. As I said, we don't climate control any of our warehouses. We let the Israeli weather do its own thing with the whiskey. And a lot of times people ask me, why don't you just put on air conditioning in the warehouse? That way you can keep maturing the whiskey for 10, 12, 15 years. And that way you'll have whiskey just like they have in Scotland. But then my reply is, we already have whiskey coming from Scotland. What's the point in creating something that tastes like a Scotch whiskey if you can create something that is completely different? And we will always go with the completely different idea. That's what we were aiming for from the beginning, and that is why I can't say what the Almond Sherry is comparable to, because we did not make it to be comparable.
Okay, so let me try another way. What would you say is the distinguishing difference between M&H whiskey and Scotch whiskey?
I think that it is the depth of the flavor. It's the full sensation of getting all the different parts of the spectrum of aroma and flavor from the cask. And I think that with the Element series and the classic that we've just tasted, it's the ability to balance the intensity and the complexity with the drinkability and the approachability of these expressions. In the end, we will get to the Apex series, in which it's a whole different story, but we'll save that for later.
Okay. I don't know. Let me ask the ladies. Janet, what do you think, Janet? Good or not?
You're asking somebody who don't drink.
Junie, I see you knocking back whiskeys. How's
It should be
it?
Junie.
Yeah.
Actually, my husband and I are really enjoying this. I think we actually
wonderful.
do like them. Yeah, a lot more. I think the flavors are very fresh and very sort of, I don't know, authentic.
Very good.
Thank you very
Really
much.
enjoying them. Yes. Thank you so much for that.
I enjoy the
Junie-
sherry a lot
Yeah.
more.
Yeah,
I like the sherry
the
a lot
sherry
more.
is excellent.
The
Junie-
cask was too peppery for me.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Just
Oh,
too-
yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Actually,
And any more
yeah.
comments or questions? Yeah.
No, I would summarize it as it's just different. We cannot compare this with Scottish light. It is different.
Yeah.
It's unique like, in that sense. The taste is unique. Yeah. Okay. I've already poured my third glass. I mean,
Only
third
your
one.
third. Only
No, I've
your
not
third.
drank it yet, but I've already poured. I'm waiting for him to move.
Oh yeah.
I've already had
Right. So
two.
we're going to get.
I already had 2 glasses of classic, and this is my second glass of
Sherry.
element.
Oh, and yeah.
The peated. I mean the sherry. I like the
So,
sherry very much.
Yeah, me too.
If I'm reading the audience right, we're all looking forward to the third glass. So let me just run you really quickly through our process, because that's also something I'd really like to pass through. So all of our products are exclusively single malt. We get mostly unpeated malted barley, so that's regular malted barley from England. But for every 6 months, we stop the unpeated barley for 2 weeks, and we do 2 straight weeks of peated, of smoky barley. And that's actually a very exciting time in the distillery. We usually do it once in the winter and once in the autumn. And the whole distillery smells like a barbecue pit, and that's actually quite fun. And that's when we do our 40 ppm peat runs. Each round of our mashing is 1 ton of barley and 6,000 liters of water. We extract the sugar from the barley, and then we ferment it for 60 to 72 hours until we get around 5 to 6% of alcohol. Once we have that minimum amount, we distill it. We double distill it in our pot stills that you will be able to see in a moment in the pictures. And we cut it between 80% and 70%. Now, when I'm talking about cutting is the process in which you single out the spirit that you want to work with. Because in distillation, you get everything, and everything includes good alcohol and drinkable alcohol, but also toxins and compounds that don't taste or smell very good. So you really have to actually physically cut the good tasting part of the alcohol from the whole distillation to get the very best spirit to make your whiskey with. So we cut our spirit between 80% and 70%, which means that relative to the industry, we have a very short heart. We cut quite high. Most distilleries cut at around 65, 60. Some distilleries even stop their spirit run at 55 or 50%. The reason we do 70% is because while it means we lose quite a bit of volume, we want to keep our spirit very mellow, very fruity, very sweet, very floral in the aroma, and we're willing to give up making more alcohol just so we would have the best alcohol to work with. Right now, our annual capacity of pure spirit is 230 liters a year, and we're hoping to develop it to 250 next year, and hopefully 300,000 liters by 2024. But something to keep in mind, we actually still count in terms of the world as a small distillery. In order to become a medium distillery, as they call it, we would have to make at least 500,000 liters of spirit. So in all senses, we are still a very small craft distillery. Our maturation is at least 3 years. Now that is something to take into account, because Israel doesn't have any type of regulation regarding what you can call or can't call whiskey. I could pretty much take a bottle of vodka, throw some pieces of wood into it, and sell it as whiskey. And in Israel, that wouldn't be illegal. But because we are not that kind of people, and we're dedicated to whiskey because we love it, we went with the Scottish standards to begin with. So our minimum is 3 years in different types of casks, from ex-bourbon to ex-red wine, ex-sherry, ex-rum, ex-cognac, ex-Islay, and so on and so on. All oak casks. Our Angel's share, once again, around 12% annually. And every year, here it says 1,100, but in 2021, we're nearing the end of it, we're going to get to 1,300 100 new casks that we have filled over the course of 2021. So here on the left, you can see our mash tun, our cooking pot, as you might otherwise call it. On the right, these are our fermentation tanks. Both the mash tun and the fermentation tanks were made by an Israeli company called MGT or Magat, as we call it here. And they're a very good company. They're welders. They did a terrific job in making the first Israeli-made whiskey cans and instruments, which is quite impressive. And here you can see our two different pot stills. So if you look at the picture on the left, the one that looks older, which is in fact older, on the right is our Romanian steel, our first distillation steel. We found it in Romania in a small village. We have no idea where it originated from. We've just recently discovered that it might be a Spanish steel that somehow ended up in Romania. It's almost 100% copper, which is something that you don't see very often anymore. And it is used for our first distillation. And the one next to it, the one on the most left, is the Karl steel, the German steel, which we use for our second distillation. It is a modern steel. It was custom made for us. Now, something that you can see on the right picture is that both of our steel's necks go down on a downward angle. And that actually has quite a bit of significance. That means that when the liquid inside boils and the steam come up, it actually hits the ceiling and goes down instantly. Nothing is going back to be reboiled inside the pot. That way, we manage, although we have a very short heart, we manage to get all the flavors and all the aromas and preserve them and have complexity while still maintaining a very light, very medium, soft kind of spirit in the end. These, as you see, are our warehouses. We have around 2,500 casks in the distillery right now. The warehouse on the right side is warehouse number 2, and the one on the left side is warehouse number 3. Now, something interesting about these two, the only thing separating them, if you look at the right picture, you'll see that on the right side, there is a concrete wall. This is the only thing separating between warehouse 2 and warehouse 3. But because the climate, even inside the distillery, is so dynamic, we observe very big differences between each warehouses in the ways that they mature the casks. And in warehouse number 2, if you look over time, the alcohol percentage in the casks keeps going down. And in warehouse number 3, it keeps going up, because there is a big difference in the humidity between the two. So it's not just about the climate zones of Israel. Even within the actual distillery, we have different climate zones, which is a very interesting case. So next, we're going to taste the elements peated, right here. So the elements peated is actually an interesting case because in the elements peated, we combine two types of peat, two types of smokiness. One is our own peated whiskey that is matured in ex-bourbon casks from peated barley. It is medium peat, it's nice, it's mellow, and the other type of peatiness that's in here, which is quite unique, is what we call ex-Isla casks. These casks are casks that were formerly used by Lafroy and Ardbeg, big names in the peated whiskey game. And once they finish working with these casks, that can be anywhere between 10 to 27 years. So once they finish working with these casks, we get those casks empty and we fill those up with our own unpeated spirit. And all the smokiness that is observed in these casks actually comes from the wood that was used to age peated whiskies in Scotland for so long. And the combination between the ex-Isla casks and our peated whiskey actually create a very interesting whiskey. It is, if you smell it, you would barely notice the smoke, very little smoke in the aroma, but when you taste it, it helps, and it's right there. But at the same time, it is at a very balanced point. Very balanced, very accessible. It's not overly peaty, and different than many peated whiskeys. You'll notice that the finish doesn't dry up your mouth and throat instantly. It stays quite fresh, quite nice, and you're able to take another sip instantly. Now, myself, I love peated whiskeys and smoky whiskeys. The peatier, the better. It's great. But a lot of people don't like peated whiskeys. In Israel, we like to say that it's like coriander. Either you love it or you don't. And with peated whiskeys, often there isn't a middle point. There isn't a whiskey that's both for people who like peated whiskeys and for people who don't like peated whiskeys. And I think that that is the closest it gets to being something like that. Because I can tell you that from countless Zooms and from a lot of workshops I've done here in the distillery, people who don't like peated whiskeys drink the Almond Sherry and they say, wow, that is a peated whiskey I can start from. And people who really do like peated whiskeys say, wow, that is a peated whiskey I can drink every day, because peated whiskeys are often very heavy. And this one is lighter. It's a lighter take on whiskey and smoke. And I think that for me, as a peat lover, that's a great end of the day whiskey that I can drink and enjoy daily. It's very casual, but still it has that nice smoky touch that often whiskey lovers look for. So
No,
once again,
no, yeah, my take on this is, I wouldn't consider this overly peated. It's actually very lightly peated.
I agree.
I mean, there are some Scottish peated whiskies which just, you drink it and you sort of say, "Oh shit!" I can smell the wood, or the burnt wood. So this is actually quite light for peated whiskey. I don't know how the others feel.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Huh?
Agree. I actually don't like peated whiskey, and I'm enjoying this one because it's not overly.
Yeah, exactly. Not overly peated. So it's just there. I have another question. What do you use for your malting process? What wood do you use?
For the malt process, I don't think it's made with wood anymore. So the malting takes place in England once again. And we get the barley already malted. So that's the way it arrives in Israel.
Oh, I see.
And I don't think that traditional malting at least, is done with wood anymore. I believe that it is now done with more sustainable, more environmental sources of heat for the drying part, because we're also buying from a company called Mountains, which are quite big, and they're malting very big batches at the time, with the only exception being peated barley, which is still dried using peated smoke from peat trunks that they use. But I don't think that wood is as widely used as it used to be in the malting industry anymore.
So when you say yours is peated, you buy the peated barley. Is it all standardized peated barley, or some are more woody than the others? And then
we get the same one each time. They have several options, but we went for the 40 ppm option, which is just the profile we're looking for, and it's one of our main goals to keep our products consistent. So we stay with this one type.
So for all your 4 whiskeys, you use the same peated barley?
Not for all 4, no. Just we use peated barley for very few of our editions. Most of our barley is actually unpeated.
Unpeated, okay.
Unpeated, yeah. This happens to have some peated spirit here, but once again, we're only making peated whiskey 4 weeks a year. So the rest of the year, unpeated, completely unpeated.
Yeah, Oded.
Yeah.
I noticed, because we're going to be having another peated one that's probably stronger. What's the reason for you calling it Elements?
Right. So the reason we're calling it elements is because there is a specific element in each of them. If you remember, I mentioned that in each of the editions, we took a specific cask type that we want to let shine through to take the central stage. So this is the element. So the element in this one is the peated, and in the former one, it was the sherry. We also have the elements Israeli red wine. So this is the element, the specific element. And it is our hope that as the years go by and we have more and more casks of different types made available, we will be able to expand that selection and have more and more cask types as our elements in the series.
All right.
I have to say, between this peated and your sherry, I still take your sherry.
Okay, yeah,
I think
it's a matter of personal taste. It's all good.
Yeah, the sherry has a unique flavor, sweetness and flavor. This one is closer, your closest whiskey to Scotch.
Yeah, you're right.
Your peated. Yeah. Would you agree? Yeah.
I love the sherry one. Yeah.
Yeah, the sherry one is quite unique.
It is.
So yeah, thanks. So while you're still having the elements peated, I'll just try to elaborate. I did say that we have different kinds of casks. So we actually divide our casks into two groups. The core range, that are casks that we constantly use in order to make our different expressions, like the ex-bourbon, the STR wine casks, the ex-Isla, the ex-Israeli red wine that we source from local wineries that are very good and use Mediterranean strains. So that's also something very special. And the ex-sherry. But the other group is the special editions. Something you should know about M&H is that we always try to get something new or something special. We would never pass on any opportunity to try maturing something in a new type of cask, even if it has never been done before, because we have the mentality of a teenager distillery. We like to do something now, experiment with something now, maybe deal with the consequences later, like we did when we were teenagers. So whether it's rum or pomegranate wine casks that are casks from a winery that makes wine out of pomegranates, ex-rye whiskey from few, Israeli white wine and port-style wine, beer cask from local microbreweries, cognac casks maturing in the Dead Sea, tequila casks, Calvados casks, ex-gin casks. We will try anything in our way to make great whiskey. And I can say from being here for the past 4 years, usually the most crazy experiments bring forward the best and most interesting whiskey.
What does the whiskey in a beer cask taste like?
It tastes very special. Actually, we're not the pioneers of making whiskey in beer casks. Actually, quite a bit of distilleries, even in Scotland, made whiskey in ale casks before. So it really depends on the beer and on the brewery and the amount of time that the beer spent inside the cask. But it can bring a lot of different aspects. I would characterize it most frequently as having notes of some caramel, of some dry green herbs, and it has a drier sensation in the finish, which is something that is, in a way, it's not like a dry sensation, it's more like a crisp. The more sensation like you would get from otherwise drinking a very good champagne. So that is something we sometimes get from beer cask, but another beer cask might turn out to be something completely different. In 2022, we're going to begin releasing the beer cask edition. So it's another thing to look forward to.
Wonderful.
Right, so if everyone's ready, I would like to move on to our final tasting of the day, which is the Apex edition that you have, which is the peated STR. Now, let me expand for a bit about the Apex series in general. So if you've just tasted the Classic and the Elements series, and I think that by that point, you get a very good idea of the way we think about whiskey. And with the Apex series, you have a chance to understand the way we feel and get excited about whiskey. The Apex is a series of limited editions. It could be a very special cask type. It could be a different environment that we've matured our casks in, like the Dead Sea. It could be just a bunch of casks from a specific kind that turned out to be really good at one point in time, and we wanted to make a special edition out of them. We always make the Apex limited edition. It's a number of bottles. If you have the full bottle with you, then you will see that the Peated STR, I believe, is one of 1,487 bottles all in all. Once the edition is done, it is done, and it wouldn't happen in the same way again. And that is just a way to sample the very best of what we're doing in a given point of time. And as you see, I'm not presenting any bottle because all the Peated STR edition is actually sold out by now. And I had a bottle of my own. I don't have it anymore. And I'm very jealous of all of you for having that because it's one of my absolute favorite Apex editions. We bottle Apex editions at cask strength or close to cask strength. So we are talking in this instance about 58.9. And the casks used here are Peated STR casks. So it's STR casks, ex-red wine that were shaved, toasted, and recharred, and then were filled with peated spirit. So it's a peated whiskey. It's 40 ppm. It's almost 60%, which I think you wouldn't feel like it is.
It's 60% ABV.
Almost 58.9.
Yeah, my goodness me.
But I mean, if I didn't tell you that up front, I don't think you would be able to take note of that because it is the very top of our capabilities in distillation and maturation. It's a very rich whiskey. The cask takes a lot of the focus in the way that it affects the distillate. And in my opinion, it's in terms of balancing spirit and cask, it is one of our top examples to date. So cheers to you.
Yeah. You know something?
And once again, I'm very jealous of you for having that one right now.
Actually, Patrick, this is probably the smoothest so far,
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, but my bottle
I just had a sip, damn shook.
My bottle number is number 1 of 1487.
Oh yeah, the bottles are not numbered. It's just one out of we realized.
I thought mine was the first bottle.
No, we get that a lot. We get that a lot. So no, yeah, it's
okay, wonderful.
We had we had numbered editions before, and it proved to be a very big mess, and we tried to avoid it ever since in order to prevent people from fighting over the number 1 and number 2.
Okay, so this is the best of the 4.
Thank you.
Is it the best? No, I'm asking you. I haven't drunk it.
There isn't a best of the 4. It's a personal opinion. It's something for each person to give their own opinion about. I will say about the Apex series that in general, it is a series designated for more experienced drinkers. That is why we want to keep it at cask strength in order to give it to experienced drinkers at a point that is closest to the way it was taken out of the cask. It's a way to respect drinkers that take out the time and buy our more prestigious limited edition, and we give them the chance to experience the whiskey to the full extent of what it has to offer. It is possible to add some water to it if you like to dilute it and open it up. It's totally an option, but it's an option that we wanted to leave with the drinker and not take that decision ourselves.
I have to say that.
Very sharp.
Yeah, very sharp. Yeah,
sharp.
no, I have to say it doesn't feel like 60%, and that's dangerous.
It's a dangerous whiskey. I agree. That's one reason it was so easy for me to finish up my own bottle. I didn't notice it was already gone because it's so like comparing to the richness and to the alcohol level, it doesn't feel alcoholic. It feels like a very nice. It's rich, it's flavorful, it's heavy, but it's not burning on the way down. It's
Yes,
a
exactly.
very
I
good
have a
combination of
question.
distillation and the cask.
Like,
Yeah.
how do you achieve that? I mean, you know, it doesn't taste like a 60%. In fact, the others, it hits me, you know, when I sniff it, the alcohol hits my nose, but not this one, right? So how do you do that? How do you achieve that?
So that's an interesting question, and I think that it has to do more with chemistry rather than something specific that we do. One point is that for the Apex series, very frequently, we use casks that are very intense type of casks to begin with. With the STR give a lot of flavor in a very short time. The extra red wine really has a very strong effect. So we know that when we put a whiskey in an extra red wine cask, the cask is going to contribute a lot of flavor that might actually counterbalance the levels of alcohol of the whiskey, but it goes even beyond that. What we observe as flavor in whiskey is natural chemical compounds that come mostly from the wood, but also from the spirit. And sometimes when we add water into the whiskey to dilute it down to lower ABV, we actually open it up in a way that the alcohol sensation, that the burning, as we call it, also opens up and is more evident in the distillate. If you came to Tel Aviv, and that's a point in which I stop and welcome you all to come visit Israel on the next occasion that's possible for you. I'd love for all of you to come visit us here in Tel Aviv in the distillery. And when you come here, make sure you schedule up with me before, because I would love to take you on a deep tour into the distillery, and at one point let you taste our spirit just as it comes out of the still, without any type of maturation, just the distillate itself, the new make as we call it, at 75%. That's how it comes out from the still. And you wouldn't imagine how nice, smooth, and sweet it is for a 75% ABV spirit. Because when there is a very high level of compounds comparing to the water, these compounds actually come together to create a drinking experience that is more about the flavor and less about the burning sensation. So since I study psychology, I did not study chemistry, then I can't bring you the full explanation to that one. But I think that when we have a high percent whiskey, we have more of the casks inside. And that way, it helps to bring more of the casks and less than the alcohol.
Oded, you better be careful. We might suddenly turn up in Tel Aviv, you know?
It's
and
you're welcome. You know? I mean, it doesn't scare me. I'd love to have you over in Tel Aviv. You might know that about Israeli people. We are very hospitable, and we love to have new friends over. So this is my invitation to all of you to come visit us here and enjoy Tel Aviv, enjoy the beautiful beach and the great culinary that we have here, and also the great whiskey that we make just in Tel Aviv's backyard here in Jaffa.
Have you been to Singapore?
I have not been to Singapore yet. One of the first things we told Louis from Cornerstone when we had our first e-meeting is that we hope that this partnership would be the ultimate reason for us to visit Singapore for the first time. So I am very much looking forward to the next occasion in which it would be allowed and possible to visit Singapore, because I'll be on the next plane.
Wonderful.
We're looking forward to this visit. Yes, definitely. So do we have
No, I just want to say all four are very drinkable whiskeys. I mean, I just drank them neat with just a little bit of water, and it just didn't burn. It just went down very smoothly. I can imagine that, you know, if it's beautiful. I love it. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers. Thank you. Yep. Do you have any more comments or thoughts or questions about the Apex series?
Hey, Oded, I think you better give them a sneak peek of the next up and coming project. the Dead Sea.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
So
you gotta talk
I
about
don't have
it.
the bottle here. So we actually have it's the Dead Sea. It should be mentioned. It was already launched, and I think I can reveal that it will arrive in Singapore at some point. So it was just launched very recently, and you would have to excuse me while I look up a bottle. So just a sec.
Yeah. Louis, you got to send us one bottle, Louis.
I just so you guys know, like the Dead Sea is so limited and so sought after. We only have 120 bottles for the entire Southeast Asian region.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, no kidding. And we've already sold 20 of them. So
Oh, there's only 9 of us here.
never mind, Stanley will take pre-orders for you.
I mean, come on, you know, one bottle each for spending 1 hour with you. 2 hours.
It's a very interesting project. I'll let Oded speak more about it.
So I mean, it's almost poetic the way you're going to see it now, because this is the bottle of the Apex Dead Sea, and as you see, it's empty because I already drank all of it. So we are actually quite our storages are empty from the Apex Dead Sea, as it was sold out globally. It was actually quite a big edition for the Apex. So what happened is that in the Dead Sea project, we took 30 different casks from several types. You have to understand that when we started this project, we did not know upfront what's going to become of it. It was the very first time anything like that has ever been attempted. So 30 casks of different types were placed on the rooftop of a hotel, the Harrow Hotel in the Dead Sea, in a metal cage, exposed to the sun, exposed to any kind of climate directly, and were left there to mature. And every few weeks, we went down to the Dead Sea to check on these casks and see the development. Now, it didn't stop there. Each of these casks had a twin cask in M&H, in the distillery in Tel Aviv, maturing for the same time, from the same type, just so we can see how big the difference is over the maturation time between Tel Aviv casks and the Dead Sea casks. We called it Med versus Dead, Mediterranean against the Dead Sea.
Yeah.
And what we've observed was a massive difference between these casks. The casks in the Dead Sea matured much faster. It got to the point in which some of these casks were at the stage of being unusable. A good example is virgin oak casks. We've tried maturing casks that haven't been used for anything before, just wood, right? And these casks usually mature very quickly and have a lot of wooden flavor. In the Dead Sea, the liquid inside the cask turned black like motor oil. It was just pitch black. And that's when we realized that not only does the maturation process go much faster in the Dead Sea, it's also to a dangerous point. Because if we left all the casks over there in the Dead Sea for the full 3 years, not only would we have whiskey that is way too matured, much over matured, the angel's share, which is in the Dead Sea 25% every year, would leave pretty much nothing in these casks. So 18 months of the maturation process were in the Dead Sea. Another 18 months were in Tel Aviv. And after the full 3 years, we combined the very best of these 30 casks together to create the Apex Dead Sea. Now, we had the bottles long before it was launched, and we wanted to check, because we were planning a big launching and we want to do it for in a big way to make sure that we have enough supply for everyone. But when we had the very first bottles of what we decided on as the final whiskey, we sent it to several international competitions. And even before it was launched, the Apex Dead Sea already won 5 gold and double gold medals in international competitions like Frankfurt, San Francisco, Ultimate Beverage Challenge, ISC, IWSC, and further. It's still going on, and we registered it to a few more competitions that we're going to know about in a few months. So who knows? It is a groundbreaking edition because
Okay,
it is the
Louis,
most.
Louis, one bottle, please.
I think
I
think
chop
it will
one,
take some time before we actually get it.
I chop one bottle, okay?
Okay, can.
Yeah,
Hey,
and
Patrick, you're
I
not the
will
only one.
and I will try it, and if the moment I like it, I will order more.
Oh, I'm not sure you'll
Hey,
get the
Patrick,
chance.
we are waiting for the invitation.
Like I mean, we haven't even the bottles that are reserved for Singapore are still at the distillery right now, and
Okay.
we've already sold 20 of them. So
Okay, so
I mean,
now
and
you sold.
Oded, I
you
think we
sold-
had like
No, you sold 21.
21. Okay, 21.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Natasha Wong also asked me to order one for her.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Right, so
Oded, I have one question. When you say
Sure.
maturation, what exactly do you define by maturation of a whiskey?
maturation is the time in which the spirit spends. It's the time the spirit spends inside the cask.
I know,
So
but
once you, yeah.
but apart from the time, is there a objective measure of when it becomes a good whiskey?
So no, there is no measure to when a whiskey becomes a good whiskey. But
Yeah.
as mentioned before, the Scottish regulation dictates that you can't call anything that's below 3 years old whiskey.
Oh, is that right? Is that right?
It's not a rule. It's not a rule that is consistent throughout the world, but it is the most strict rule. And when we started making whiskey, we decided that if there are whiskey laws in the world, we want to go by the strictest law of them all. So our whiskey would be accepted as whiskey anywhere, anytime.
But you just said that 3 years. By 3 years, your Dead Sea whiskey would not qualify because after 18 months, you're already mature. And
No, it would it's so let me just correct that. It's all about qualification. If we left the casks in the Dead Sea for 3 years, the angel share would take quite a bit of the volume, and the wood would have too much effect. That is why we only left it in the Dead Sea for 18 months, and then we moved it back to Tel Aviv for another 18 months.
18 months.
That way, it completed for 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. Then I have one more question. You said just now that you took the Dead Sea barrels and you mixed them for the Dead Sea bottle, the Dead Sea whiskey. Now, when you mix them, can you still qualify to be called a single malt?
Yes, single malt is actually, it divides into two words. When we're talking about single malt first, it doesn't have to be whiskey. Single malt refers to single, which is a single distillery that all the spirit is made in.
Yes.
And malt, which refers to the source of grain. Malt is 100% barley. So, for example, we also make gin. Our gin is also single malt because all of the spirit is distilled in the distillery, in one distillery, single distillery, and it's 100% malted barley. So yeah, it still does qualify as single malt.
Single malt, okay. Yeah, no, because I sometimes, okay, so when you're talking about a blended whiskey, it is not from a single distillery.
Correct. It's most often from several distilleries and not necessarily malt, unless you read blended malt.
Yes. So a single distillery can blend your single malts and still call it a single malt. No, a single distillery can blend your malted whiskey and still call it a single malt.
Right.
No, I think what he's saying is provided it must be a single grain also. In this case, it's barley, right?
Yeah, but exactly. So my point is, if it's a malt, a single malt whiskey from one sort of batch of malted barley, but you put it in different casks and you blend the different casks, it still qualifies as single malt. But if you blend it, if you blend it from different distilleries, even from the same malt, same barley, it can't be called a single malt.
No, it's called a blended malt.
Yeah, it becomes a blended malt.
It becomes a blended malt, correct.
Yeah. So single malt must come from one single distillery.
That's correct.
And it must be malted barley.
If it's called malt, then yes, it's malted barley.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
Yep.
So if we don't have any more questions at this point, then I would very much like to thank you for spending time and sharing a drink with me and asking some great questions. This has been great. I'd like to also take this chance to thank the Singapore Press Club and our great partners and friends in Cornerstone, which
Oded,
are terrific.
Oded,
yeah.
You got to pour one more whiskey and we will drink to it. Before you say goodbye, one more whiskey.
One more whiskey.
Yeah,
Even if you don't have it.
One more small sip and then we drink to good health. And
oh yeah, sure. I still have my whiskey. I'm actually standing here with you. Yeah, it's all good. I just wanted to thank you at the end of the presentation. I'm still here. It's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were going off, so I thought better.
No. I'll stay here as long as you want me to. I'm here with you until everyone's happy. It's all good. I'm not going anywhere. I just want to thank you for spending this time with me and doing this presentation with us and taking the time to joining us today. So thank you, the Singapore Press Club and Cornerstone. And if we have any more questions, and I know we have a nice quiz coming up. So thank you and good luck in the quiz, everyone. I hope you listen carefully.
How do you say cheers in Israeli again? Hi.
Lechaim.
How do you spell that?
Lechaim. Lechaim. I know this. Lechaim. Yeah, perfect. Very good. Lechaim.
So lechaim, everybody.
Lechaim. Yeah. Hi. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Well, I've already got a few orders sent out to Stanley. So anybody still want to order quickly, let us know.
Yeah. I still feel your sherry is the most special. It's unusual. You know, it's unusual. I can drink the sherry all night, you know, and I won't get pissed.
Thank you.
A close fight with the Apex, I think. It's a close fight. It's a close fight with the Apex.
Yeah, close fight with Apex.
Yeah.
But Apex, I worry because it's 60%.
Yeah, but only if,
it doesn't hit you.
Yeah, once you hit you.
Correct. But despite that, it was damn smooth, right?
It is.
Incredibly smooth.
So that's the thing. See, it's sort of is a what is called like a fraud. You know, it whacks you there.
What I'm afraid of is, you know, you drink the Apex. You know, after about 5 whiskeys, you stand up and suddenly you have to sit down.
You are at your apex in that case.
Yes, I know. Your apex comes very quickly, man. Yeah, but it is very impressive. No, Oded, it's I have to say, congratulations. You've done a super duper job on the whiskeys.
Thank you.
I predict you will do very well.
Thank you, and it's our mission to keep on surprising you and doing something new and something exciting every year. So there's always something new to look forward to from M&H. So I hope this is just the first of many more presentations that we're going to do together. If you'll have me. And I'm sure that we have a lot of great things coming up in 2022, both in whiskey and hopefully in the world in general. Let's hope it's going to be a much better year. And I'm sure it will.
Yeah. So we can get together when we get a bottle of Dead Sea.
That's you know what? Maybe I'll make sure that I'm on the same shipment. I'll sit on the pallet as it is shipped. I'll see the world, you know, and then I'll arrive in Singapore and get to drink the Dead Sea with you face to face, which is, I think, the best outcome.
Absolutely wonderful.
Okay, Chris and Stanley.
Do the quiz,
You have to let us know when the Dead Sea one comes in and the price. So we'll inform our members so they can order.
Yeah, Louis, No need to worry about the price. You just chop one for me.
No problem, no problem. Actually, I think we're gonna have to reorder quite soon. So actually, that Dead Sea might be gonna leave the warehouse soon and be on its way. But yeah, it's, you know, global shipping now, it might take us a few months, but definitely in 2022 we'll make the announcement. I mean, it's crazy. The interest for the Dead Sea has been amazing. Like, people just, you know, like you said, right, just making pre-orders and chopping their bottles, and it's like the bottles haven't even left yet, you know.
Yeah, actually, now that you say it, I increase my order to 2 bottles, please.
Wow.
Wow, okay.
So that,
Creating some inflation there.
yeah. So that
Don't
you
worry.
know, I will welcome this group to come and join me to open the first bottle.
Can.
Two
The
bottles,
moment it
We
arrives,
accept. We accept.
two bottles, 2 bottles.
okay. The moment it arrives, I'll let you guys know, and
Hey, I
yeah,
got a question. Tomorrow is Black Friday. Is there any Black Friday offer?
Wow.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Stanley, you got or not? Got Black Friday deal not tomorrow? Stanley jam ready.
This is more than Black Friday. This is 2 weeks of Black Friday for you guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, but you guys are getting a really exclusive deal. What's the deal, Stanley? We're gonna offer for.
Yeah. So the deal will be for the classic, right? It will be 89 net.
89 net. Wow. Okay.
The peated and sherry will be 99 net.
Oh wow.
Apex will be 162.
Apex
The
one.
highest.
Okay. Okay. So
And if you like to get the full range, right, in a
Yeah.
set, it will be 399.
still 399.
Yeah, that'll be better.
That's what you and me ordered this time
Yeah.
around. You got to order one more set.
No problem, you guys. We hold the offer valid for the press club for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So if you guys are interested, you know, just I would suggest getting the full set because it's the best value you're ever
Hey,
gonna
hold on. Tell me again one more time. The classic is how much?
I already should send it to Janet. Janet will spread it to you guys.
A classic is 89. I know you said Apex is 169, and the peated and the other one is 99.
Sherry
Yes.
is also 99, 89.
The elements,
Sherry
Yeah.
is how much? 89.
no, Sherry is
How about the
99.
Dead Sea?
99.
99. Yeah.
For the Dead Sea?
the Dead Sea, the Dead Sea. I'll let you know next year, lah. I mean, yeah.
But I thought you have already some bottles, right? So you can let us know the price now.
No, we need a separate tasting for Dead Sea, please.
No, but I thought you have already the bottles, right?
No, the bottles are still in Israel. They haven't even been shipped.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah,
I thought you
we-
said you
we-
already have a certain
Yeah,
number.
we just secured the allocation with Oded. We just haven't shipped it yet because we're waiting for the next time that we need to reorder.
So you have to pay a big sum of money to be mabuk faster. Apex is 162.
Well,
Okay,
it's,
I tell you what, you Louis,
Yes.
your 399 deal is damn good,
oh, I mean, guys, that is
You're not helping in this matter.
Okay,
guys, that is a press club special, right? That is what the bars and restaurants pay for the bottles. We are giving you the super lelong. This is it's a 2-week thing just for you guys. You cannot buy this at this price as a retail consumer. Yeah.
Okay one more set for me
Okay, Ken.
Yeah.
Stanley will sort you out and go up
Stanley,
tomorrow.
one more set for me, 4-5. The 4 bottles, 399, and then I want 2 bottles of your Dead Sea. I buy blind. I order blindly. Whatever you price, I take lah.
I tell you what, maybe hopefully if next year when the Dead Sea
Pat,
arrives,
is this whiskey talking or you?
Look, I only had 8 whiskeys. What the hell? You know, you mean after 8 whiskeys, you think I'm Mabo already? No.
No, I'm not saying a mabo, but high lah.
No lah, where got high one? You know,
Yeah.
I'm a whiskey collector lah.
You all
Hey,
listen to
I
what
got
Louis is
enough-
going to offer us. Wait.
Okay, speak
No,
up, Louis.
I was gonna say if COVID regulations allow, maybe we can invite the press club just to when the Dead Sea comes, we'll get a bottle and we'll do
Okay.
a private tasting.
At your
Um,
premises?
yeah. At our warehouse, we'll host you. But let's see, because that's beyond our hands, and
Yeah, sure.
yeah, we'll definitely keep you guys updated once that comes in.
Louis, on another note, when you have your Christmas specials, do let us know. The Chinese New Year Christmas specials and all that
Yes,
you'll
yes,
have.
yes, for sure.
Let us know.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay. Shall
Should we
we
do the
move
quiz?
on to the quiz?
Yeah. What's happening on the quiz?
You want to do the quiz now? No. We'll let them
Are we in a
sleep,
state to do it?
sleep overnight on it first.
Sleep,
and
sleep
send them the
overnight.
quiz.
Okay.
Okay lah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Overnight.
So
and
the winner of the quiz is gonna get a free bottle from us, from Cornerstone. Your choice of the classic or the elements. Unfortunately, not the Apex, because that's very limited. But
Fair.
whoever wins the quiz, best of luck to you. Let's see what the results, how the result comes out, and yeah.
Yeah, I tell you what lah. I will not participate in the quiz.
Oh,
Thanks.
okay.
Thank you.
That's what I said earlier, right? I said you should disqualify yourself. So you did, which is good, yeah.
Yeah. I already got 4 bottles here, and I'm gonna order one more set of 4. So you all carry on.
Plus 2 bottles of the Dead Sea. Don't forget.
That's it, next year. By that time, next year, all the 4 finished already. all the 8 bottles finished already. Yeah. So Stanley, please send one more box.
Okay, I'll coordinate with
Wonderful.
Stanley.
No. I think thanks so much, Louis and Stanley, for hosting us. It's wonderful. And Oded, I hope you're still here, but it's been
I am all the time.
most enjoyable. I would never have. By the way, I'm the only one who likes your Israeli wines.
You're the only one.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Israeli wine.
Oh,
Right.
wine.
So yeah, same here. Israeli wine is lovely, and it's not very common around the world, but we drink a lot of it here in Israel. So yeah, I love it too.
So
Thanks for that.
In fact, we just had a special. Well, Janet, what was your special on the Israeli wines that about a month ago or 2 months ago?
Yeah, a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I polished it all off, lah.
You
Oh my
did.
God.
You ordered
Yeah,
the
well, I
most.
bought-
You
Huh?
ordered 12 bottles
I
of.
ordered 12 bottles of Israeli wines and I finished it in 2 months, lah.
It's good, is it?
So good. It was so wonderful.
Yeah,
I
mid.
remember what was the name already?
Very
Judy.
drinkable Israeli wine.
Judy,
I
what's the
can't
name of
remember.
the
I
what
can't
already?
remember what it's called. Also from Cornerstone.
No, it's not.
Binun.
Oh,
Louis, you got to go and get Israeli wine, my friend.
Patrick.
Actually, with the owner of Binun, it's actually a
Binun,
friend
yes.
of ours. So he uses our storage to store his wines when he's in Singapore. So yeah, so we know him very well, and he makes such great wines.
Yeah.
So I mean.
So anyway, I bought 12 bottles of Israeli wine. I opened 1 bottle at home. Before I know it, my son took 2 bottles. My daughter took 3 bottles. So one day I opened my fridge and I said, "Oh shit, what happened to my Israeli wines?" Then they said, "Oh, sorry, Dad, we went out for a party and I took 2 bottles of Israeli wine. They were so damn good. Sorry, I take." So unfortunately, in my house, my kids, treat my wine as if like it's their their private cellar,
Yeah.
So it finished very quickly. But I highly recommend good Israeli wine. I mean, I'm sure there's good Israeli wine and not so good Israeli wine, but
Yeah.
I'm saying the good Israeli wine is really very good. It's
I
obviously
agree.
they've been making wines for a very long time quietly, in Jaffa. I'm sure 3,000 years of winemaking, and they've been getting pissed on wine for a very long time.
Right. Hey, okay, good night. My transport has arrived.
Okay.
I gotta go.
Okay.
Hey, thanks, Oded. That was
Thanks.
really good.
Yeah.
Good
Sure.
evening.
Thank you for
By the
attending.
way, have you finished the whiskeys or not?
No, lah, of course, I'm going to be drinking slowly, lah. Please, lah.
Oh,
No.
hello. I thought
Tomorrow is a long day for me, okay, friend. I mean, I cannot afford to be mabo. And I think, you know what? I was just going to give you some advice. I hope you're taking liver tablets, huh?
why? What liver tablets?
We need it, lah, friend, when we
Hey.
drink like that
Lah,
once in a while.
I've been drinking for the last 30
I know, but
years.
still, doesn't liver tablets won't harm you. They'll do you good.
Good
Okay.
advice.
Good night, guys.